Really? Mic in them, right?
Yeah.
We just record right away, Pat.
Okay.
Thanks
for the warning.
Yeah. Well, there's no warning. That's because all the best stuff comes out when we're not expecting it. You know. What were you saying about your bitch pods?
I stole that material, by the way. It's
Oh, you say that now that we're on air.
Yeah. Sebastian Maniscalco. He has a great bit on a guy working out with bitch pods. It's really funny. Look him up.
That guy's almost too much for me. I some of his jokes I laugh uncontrollably at, and then others I'm like, he seems like he's trying so hard.
Oh yeah, no, I'm a huge fan. I saw him live too. Howdy, Vellner. How are you doing?
Doing all right. You know, surviving, making it through my quarantine. What about you guys?
Yeah, same.
Thanks for having me on the Dad Vodcast.
That's actually a good name. That's a good name for it.
I'm flattered.
I feel Rez is down there with his Christmas tree.
And
I like this.
And his Spider-Man poster in the back.
Yeah.
His one peace and quiet he can find in his house.
Yeah.
Pretty much. I had to make this office for the quarantine.
Nice.
It's the best I came up with.
Hey, well,
Rez, why don't you show Pat your haircut that you gave yourself?
It actually looks great now. I like it.
Yeah, it's coming in a little bit.
A little lopsided, maybe. But...
That's what I said.
I think that's just my head, though, to be honest.
Oh, okay. Maybe.
That's an even better shirt.
You did that yourself?
Yeah.
Hey, that's pretty sweet.
Not bad, eh?
You have a career in that.
Thanks, man.
His mom's a hairdresser.
And my sister.
Okay.
Oh wow.
I just feel like trying to cut yourself would just be hard. It has its own challenges.
Yeah, well, I gave the clippers. I gave the clippers to Lex, and like she was just like going hard, and it was pulling at my hair, and I was like, forget this, let me do this, and I just did it myself. I mean, what's the worst thing that could happen, right? No one's gonna see me for God knows how long. So
yeah, you're married.
Yeah, exactly.
How do you have a career in cutting your own hair? You have to pay yourself?
Yeah, I guess it's true. I don't know. You could just teach seminars on other people how they can cut their own hair.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You could do it over Zoom.
Dude, that shit's getting a lot of views on YouTube.
Cutting your own hair?
There's this salon in town actually. They did a live YouTube video on how to cut your own hair. Pete, you know this guy. I think he went to St. Mark's. He went to your high school.
Adamo.
Yeah.
No way.
Adamo. Yeah.
Oh my God.
I might get there. I don't know.
There you go.
I think I'm gonna have to watch that actually.
You guys are looking all right.
So Pat, you're out on Vancouver Island, eh, Pat? Am I right on Victoria?
Yeah, well, we're in Nanaimo.
Oh, Nanaimo.
Yeah.
Very cool. And that's where
home of the bar.
That's where Michelle is going to school or was attending her
residency's here, yeah.
That's right.
She's doing our family residency right now. So they're kind of all over the place, and the whole pandemic has kind of thrown a wrench into a bit of it because the family residents bounce around between services. And so depending on what you're on, you could be super busy or very, very slow. And I think some services that have basically stopped, they're just kind of reallocating residents or different docs into different areas where they might be needed. So I don't know, if you're like a dermatology resident or something like that, there might not be a lot for you to do because it's not urgent or emergency care. Like most hospital services have cut everything down to what counts as emergency. So even surgeries, like any elective surgeries are canceled. So they're only doing life-saving procedures. So that basically cuts out a ton of stuff. Like even people who are getting chemotherapy, it's all canceled. Stuff like that. So it's a bit weird. They're kind of all over, but it's been interesting. I think it's hectic because it's hard to plan and prepare, and you don't know where you're going to be, and you're kind of constantly reacting.
So are you seeing a little more of her nowadays, or?
It depends. She was on obstetrics for a little while at the start of this, and that service is a lot of, because I mean, people have babies any time of the day. Like they do their 24-hour shifts, and then they rotate through that. So you do like a 24-hour on, 24 off, and then you're back on again. And then they had one clinic day per week. So they would just like, I'd have her for like a full day, and she, depending on how busy the night was, they might be able to get some sleep in the call room, and she'd like come back, and some days she'd have to like sleep the day, but some days not so much, and we'd be able to go and do some stuff. I mean, you can't do a lot anyway, but we're lucky here. It's not such a densely populated area that you can find your space. And if you're smart about, you know, social distancing is not necessarily full isolation, right? Like you can still, I can still walk on the other side of the street of somebody and still go outside and walk the dog. And like, we have lots of like miles and miles of mountain bike trails and things like that. So we've been trying to sneak off and go do some like trail running or things like that when she has time, just because it's like, it's easy and it's nice to be outside a little bit, because most of my days I spend pretty cooped up in here other than taking the dog out, just because I'm trying to get rid of any unnecessary out and about. But yeah, so she's been seeing more of her like then, and then her other services since then have been very kind of 9 to 5-y with a couple exceptions. So this is good. She's been on like a pretty normal schedule. But it's weird. I think it's weird for them because they just don't know what to expect.
It's all kind of up in the air. Yeah. That's cool though. I kind of lost track of where you were at with your chiropractic stuff. Are you done school?
Yeah, so I'm finished in June. I was working, I started work in the new year, and I don't know, like my clinic's been closed for 3 weeks or something now.
That's so cool. It's you actually got to start working at a clinic. That's awesome. Yeah.
So I was doing a few days a week, and for like, you know, not full days, but it was nice getting some work in and just, you know, using those skills. But so that didn't last super long before this quarantine hit, unfortunately. But you know, it's the way things are right now. So I'm trying to stay on top of some of that stuff too, and do some reading and a little bit of learning while I'm stuck at home.
That's what I was going to ask. That's good.
Yeah, and trying to like touch base with some patients who are, you know, maybe in worse shape than others, and see how people are doing while they're stuck at home too, right? So
that's what I was going to ask. Because last time we chatted, it was you were saying that, you know, the virtual world in the chiropractic world is a little bit different than let's say like the physiotherapy or stuff like that. Like assessments are a little bit harder to do virtually. But have you been like experimenting with that or not at all?
Well, it's kind of tough because the initial framework of like the CERB like relief funds from the government basically made it so it didn't incentivize you to do any work. Because like if you were doing what they call telehealth, where like I'm doing virtual patient appointments, and I'm, you know, even if I'm charging less for it, but I'm seeing enough patients that I'm making, you know, more than $1,000 in a month, which isn't an unreasonable amount. I don't qualify for benefits now. So people were very like, well, you know, if I'm only going to see half my patient load, I'm not going to like, I'm sort of making not much money, but I'm still helping these people. Now the government's like punishing me for doing that. So there's been weird, and they've been readjusted some guidelines. Our clinic looked into the telehealth thing, and just to put the framework into it, we like sent out surveys to all of our patients of who would be interested. And initially it seemed like people were very hopeful that this whole thing would blow over quite quickly. They were just kind of like, oh, you know, just reschedule me for like a couple weeks whenever you guys are open again, which as we've seen is maybe not the case. So our initial kind of like recon of that made it like gave us feedback that people weren't really interested in doing it. Some of our physios have been doing it. Most of the chiros aren't. But now, you know, as we get deeper into it, I think we're going to try to put the feelers back out and see if people are interested. And I mean, other than that, like we've just been doing that kind of stuff, reaching out to patients pro bono, just saying like, hey, how are you doing? Because it's not what, like the conversation I had with you is that it's difficult to assess someone on a first visit where you've never seen them before. And really make a very reasonable diagnosis or really get a good picture of what's going on. when you can't see them and you can't move them and you can't, like, you don't really get a full picture.
Mm-hmm.
All I have to go on is like what you're saying, and I can kind of see the way you're moving maybe, but it presents a lot of challenges. So, but if it's someone that you've seen before, and, you know, I've been treating you for a week or 2 weeks, and I know kind of what's going on, and I know the progression you've been making, it's easier for me to make a plan and just have a little check-in. And, you know, how are like exercises, like home care stuff, like we do a lot of that, just education and homework, like rehab stuff. We can give a ton of that. And that's a lot of what I focus on, trying to equip people with tools to make themselves better, right? So if you have already given people that, then it's pretty easy thing to do digitally. Like you can just check in, see how people are doing. It's hard because, another big part of what we do is the manual care, where you're actually going to like move the joints and move the muscles and do a little bit of muscle work. But so you lose that facet, but there's still a lot that can be done to help people. And I think that a lot of it is just people don't know exactly what to do, or they aren't sure if what they're doing is the right thing. So just to reassure people that, hey, you know, like this is good, this is correct. Like it's okay if it feels like this is what you can expect. Like people just need to know that and hear that. So sometimes just to check in and say, okay, you can make a quick correction on this exercise, or you can progress this one now to this. Because what we hope is that now with a lot of extra time, people are actually doing their exercises, which often isn't the case.
Yeah,
it's true.
But so, most people are now at home working out by themselves, no coaches, no nothing. So, and with some equipment rented from the gym. So are you?
Or equipment that they just made, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So are you getting some emergency phone calls like, hey, I just threw out my back trying to deadlift water jugs, you know?
Yeah, I haven't yet. And I think that the good news is we actually talked a bit about this on, and there's that United in Movement 24-hour YouTube thing. The owner of my clinic, my boss, basically, Dr. Abe Avender, was on with me, and we talked a bit about this kind of stuff, how just, this circumstance is kind of unique, and you're going to have people who are, even if they're fit people, are trying to do things that they've never done before, just because they're trying to get creative with what they can do, because it's boring to do the same thing over and over, right? And so you may have people coming up with new exercises, or creating kind of new pieces of equipment, or trying to like do whatever, like deadlifts with like pulling a heavy chair off the ground, where they're like moving in awkward movement patterns, right? So you are going to see some of that. And I think it was important to kind of talk about like how loading isn't that important. So, you know, a lot of people are limited in what they have, and most people don't have heavy loads at home, and that's totally good. Because you're like less likely to do something weird, where like, you know, one aberrant movement when you're moving a heavy load can really break you. But, you know, you can manage that with light loads, and you can compensate, and you can move, and it doesn't, if you did 1,000 of them, it would bother you for sure. But it's like, this is kind of a good chance for people to deload, that normally, you know, a lot of us don't really take. So it's sort of this mandatory deload period where people can kind of reset their systems, and their joints and things like that might be a whole lot happier coming out the back end of this, just because they haven't had the chance to load super heavy. But it is, you do need people to be smart about it. So I know we've talked to some people about it, and I think fortunately, of my patient base, I don't think a lot of people have access to like a ton of equipment, so they're not doing anything super heavy or crazy. But I haven't had any emergency calls yet, but so knock on wood. But
or you could on the opposite side, instead of lifting up a weird chair, you could have some psychos out there who just want to do 1,000 reps of everything, and they get overuse injuries.
Yeah, so it is, you know, as much as one movement can be catastrophic with a heavy load, you know, there's also the death by 1,000 cuts, right? Like that. That happens.
Vellner, I don't know if Pete's referring to himself, so I'd like for you to chime in on this here. I just like your opinion. Pete has decided to do 1,000 reps of something every Saturday. And last Saturday, he did 1,000 air squats. I know you've done that before, actually, with an EMOM, right? You did, when was that? You did 1,000 air squats with a 5 push-up EMOM?
Yeah, it was like, it was after the 2018 games. maybe.
Yeah.
That's
we
a nice.
talked 2017 maybe. I remember we talked about it because Austin Maliolo we were at the training grounds one year, so it might have been 2017, and he was just relentless. Like every day, at least a couple times, he would mention doing 1,000 squats for time, and everyone was like, "Look, we're not going to do that. It's just like it's meaningless training." It's just like at that point when we're trying to like prep for the games, it was meaningless reps that might reduce your ability to do meaningful training for the next day. So we were like, you know what? Maybe not. We'll do it. And I was like, you know what, Austin, I'll do it. I will do it. Like, I'll do it later. I'll do it after the games, like whatever. When I'm just like, I want to get back into moving, but I'm not ready to like be doing hard CrossFit yet again. So I was like, you know, and then it was one like in the fall one day on a weekend. Yeah. I was just like, I don't know. I think I was like probably went out the day before or something like that. And was just like, wanted to do something that was, I could do reasonably slowly if I wanted to and just like complete it. It wasn't that hard. Like, you know, you do like, I think it took me like 26, 27 minutes, something like that.
Well, that's like, fast.
But it's not really like when you think about it, 5 push-ups will take you what, like 5 seconds. And then you have to do like 40 squats in the rest of the minute, maybe less than that, 37 or something like that.
So that's fast. I did 1,000 straight in 32 minutes.
Okay.
So
yeah,
you were moving.
It's like, I don't know. It's fine. And so again, when you're limited with what you can do anyway, I mean, sure. There are certain movements that I think your legs are pretty durable and endurant. You know, trying to do 1,000 push-ups on a Saturday.
What about keep going there. What about 1,000 pull-ups?
Tomorrow I'm going to try and chip away at 1,000 pull-ups.
Better you than me.
I have like
I would say look at everybody who did like 300 pull-ups at the games last year in Mary. How trash their like biceps and stuff were.
Yeah. I have no intention of tearing or, you know, coming out with like I have preservation intentions,
which is good. So
yeah, so like I'm gonna like like I'm not gonna go for a games world record here of 1,000 pull-ups, but I just want to do 1,000, see what happens.
So the question is, do you want the whole day, or do you want to be like?
It's going to depend on how close I get to ripping. You know, at one point I might have to just pull out because the hands get so soggy that the skin is starting to come off, and that.
No, you know, you take a break for 3 hours, you come back.
Yeah, exactly.
100. Like you could do that probably, but if you just stood there under the bar and like waited until you hit 1,000,
Yeah, I'm gonna start that way. We'll see how far I get.
As your coach, I'm gonna strongly recommend that you don't do that, given the announcement that came out last night that the games might still actually be happening.
Yeah, that's like 3.5 months away at least.
We don't know shit. We don't know anything.
Well, it's not gonna happen tomorrow.
Anyway, all I can do is make recommendations.
Cool. I'll take that to heart.
Yeah, you can't even go see them. He's like, yeah, sure, I'll definitely do that.
That pull-up bar right there.
The other thing about pull-ups versus push-ups is if you're kipping, it changes it a lot. Whereas a push-up is a pretty strict movement where, like, I might think the push-ups might get worse.
I think so, too.
1,000 push-ups?
I think your pecs the next day, like your shoulders, like, oh, man. Can you imagine?
Imagine trying to go overhead for, like, the next week after that. You just like wouldn't happen, right? So I don't know. And not that, I mean, probably the same thing for the pull-ups. Like your lats and biceps and stuff will be so
destroyed.
Yeah.
Completely destroyed.
So how's training going for you nowadays, man? Are you training at home mostly? You got access to a gym? I see that dumbbell that you have. You can screw the weights.
That's what I got.
Yeah, you just got the dumbbell in the living room, the single dumbbell.
Just throw the fat grips on it and go for a ride.
Yeah, I've got like some fat grips. I've got a couple bands. I've got a 25-pound dumbbell, and I've got that loadable one with I only have weights up to 50 pounds. I could steal some from the gym, but I could if I wanted to, but I don't really. And I have a bike erg that I brought home. But other than that, that's all I have. And I've just been like running a fair amount.
That's great. And like,
yeah, it's fine. It's like simple, and it's not. One thing that I found is I think that since I don't even know what, like April of like, so probably like a year, maybe more than that even, because Wadapalooza last year. But it's been a long time since I've been able to train without a competition like on the horizon, like without something coming down the pipe that you're like, okay, I have to be ready for this. So like kind of gets wearing on you. Like every piece of training holds a lot more weight, and every mistake feels amplified, and every little thing that you do where you have a bad day, it just like eats at you a little more when you've got something coming that you need to be ready for. So, with the way that the season changed after the last cycle, it basically was like, I did Wadapalooza in end of January. Then I had a little bit of a break, and then, well, I guess not even, because we had the Open right away then still. And then I went away. No, and then I was training for Rogue, and then I was training for the Games, and then I was training for the Open again, then Dubai, then Wadapalooza, then West Coast Classic. And it just it's been like a never ending nonstop one after another. So it's been like 18 months that I haven't had a real off season of more than, a month. So I'm just trying to look at it like that, just say, hey, well, I can put in some hard intervals. I can do some things. I can do a little bit of movement quality work, which I need to do. I've had some little nagging injuries that have been bugging me for quite a while. And it's just a good chance to mentally reset and just do some exercise and be happy that I did it, and just be like, could I have gone a little bit faster on the bike? Yeah, probably. Whatever. It's meaningless. So right now it's just like you're saying, the Games, if it happens, is still far enough away that I'm not stressed about not, doing heavy lifting every day and not doing, certain gymnastics things every day. I have a lot of stuff that I can do at home. I'm a little bit limited in terms of our apartment's pretty small. We don't have a lot of space outside. I'm on a second floor. I can't really have anything heavy. I could make arrangements if I needed to, down the line, but right now I just don't feel like I really need to. And it's sort of been refreshing and nice to have that break. My body's thanking me a little bit, and it's been good. It's been low stress. And I've just for all the little bits of information that keep coming out, I'm not going to take anything too seriously until we hear something more real. And so for now, I'm just kind of enjoying it. And I'm fortunate I got to get a couple big competitions in this year. I've had a good year so far already. So it's not like I waited and took that off season early and then now was my time that I was going to compete. That's quite stressful. A lot of people that are in that scenario. But yeah, so I don't know. I'm just like in a different situation than some people, and I'm kind of just taking it in stride. And I'm like happy to have the mandatory reset.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be refreshing for a lot of people to hear, as someone who tries to push for a podium spot at the games every single year, that you're just, taking this quarantine in stride and you're super relaxed about it. I think a lot of people might, without hearing you say this firsthand, they might assume that, you along with a bunch of other games athletes are kind of stressed out about, what their training is going to look like heading into the coming months, because especially not knowing what's going to go on with the games and all this, but
yeah,
just not having access to the gym and all this could be stressful. But it's cool to hear that you're just super relaxed about it and almost taking it as a rest for the body and mind.
Well, and it's hard, yeah, for sure. And it's hard to be, I don't know, I thought about it a lot when we just kind of started, and I have a little bit of a different insight into stuff just because obviously Michelle, my fiance, works in the medical field. So I hear a lot about what's going on, and I'm pretty in touch with what's going on globally and locally. And so being extra stressed about it, there's literally nothing you're going to do. Like you can't influence anybody to make any decision at all on any level about this whole thing. So it's just and you just, it's a relationship with other people and safety and health. And it's just I don't think those are things you want to rush. This is not a time to be selfish. This is a time to be selfless and think about other people, because that's what matters. And I get a lot of, every time I post a little workout at home with that dumbbell, I get a ton of messages from people saying how, there's no way you for sure can get access to a gym if you just ask somebody and I'm like, yeah, I'm sure
100%.
that I could, but that's not really the point, right? I think I'm a pretty high exposure risk because Michelle's in and out of the hospital every single day and I live with her. So, I mean, for me to then just like say, oh, whatever, like I need to go to the gym. I need to squat heavy today. And then just go and bring that into that gym. Like most places, like the owners of that gym probably are in and out doing various things, like whether it's equipment rentals or tidying or little things like that. Like there is traffic places all the time. So you just have to like think about how you're going to affect other people. And so I know I'm a high exposure risk. And so I don't want to bring that into everyone and like throw it around the public because that's super bad. And like, you know, my selfishness to say, oh, you know, like I want to like do a heavy lift today could mean that like some people go to the hospital and get quite sick. Right. So is it that worth it? Like, not really. And so like at the end of the day, is it like, I'll be fine. Like if it comes time and I have to put some extra work in the end, like I'll do it and I'll be fine. And it's okay. So I just like, my perspective is a little bit different, I think, with just my proximity to the health field too. And so I think it's been like a good reminder to, I'll usually answer most people who send me messages like that and just say like, yeah, I probably could, but I'm not, and you shouldn't. And like, you should take this seriously.
Yeah, no, that's cool, man.
Do you think, cause you're always a pretty easygoing, like relaxed dude. Do you think, winning Wodapalooza helps with that?
Well, like, I won it by the skin of my teeth. So,
but still, yeah. But I mean, still, you know, you're coming off a win, you know, so that must feel pretty good to know that, like, okay, like you were in a good spot before.
Well, and I think that even just, I mean, my season so far has been very strong, and I think it's nice to know that, yeah, like I'm ultra competitive when I need to be and when I have to be. So it definitely, that helps. And then like, I mean, even financially, like I made some money in Dubai and at Wodapalooza. So now I'm a little bit less strapped than I maybe would be, or than some people are. So it's okay for me to be a little bit more relaxed, but I don't know. I think it probably helps to have the confidence that like, okay, like it'll be fine. When the chips are down, I'll be able to like put it back together.
Throw it down, yeah.
And I honestly think that like I was getting quite burnt out by the time Wodapalooza was done. And you know, I had planned to do with the West Coast Classic and then do Rogue. And I think that I would have made it through this year, but I would have been very, very, very tired by the end of it and like hated CrossFit. and it just like, so I think that this is really a bit of a blessing for me to be able to take some time and just like do some workouts for fun and enjoy it a little bit again. And like, whatever, take part in the little charity events that are going on and just like play around with my fitness a little bit, do some stuff for me and for fun and not stress. And then, you know, on the outside of that, be able to ramp up and be willing to put your head down again. Because it's hard, like, you know, after Dubai coming back and then like trying to get ready for Wodapalooza again, it's like those few times when you're just back on the ergs, like hammering intervals, you're just like no.
Yeah,
not again.
And you're also, I don't know if people remember, but you won the Open.
Yeah.
You know, so, I mean, you won the Open. Yeah. You went to Dubai and you smashed that with Brent. You know, finished second, and then win Wodapalooza. So yeah, I mean, your season.
It's been a good year.
It's interesting, and it's you know, I've said this before about Pete too. It's like it's just refreshing to hear that perspective, because you could obviously say like, fuck, like I was having a year, like I am ready, you know, like I'm ready to go to the games and fucking beat Matt this year. You know what I mean? Like, so to hear that perspective, I think that's pretty refreshing. People probably relate to that. So that's good.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, there's not much you can do about it. So for me to just keep being upset and stomping my feet around it is not really that helpful. So I'm just, whatever. I think that it is an opportunity for me to back up and then address some things that need to be addressed and take a much needed mental break.
Mm-hmm.
Because yeah, like, I mean, the other thing is like these competitions are like, yeah, you can have a good year and ride a bit of momentum, but running a whole competition year, like that doesn't run on momentum, like that runs on planning. And you can't just keep running one event into another and thinking like, okay, I'm going to ride this out. Like at the end, you're going to burn out and you're going to feel the effects at some point. So like I said, I think this was really a good thing, like to try to keep that fire lit for like 12 months in a row is super, super hard.
Mhm.
Motivation wise, like physically, it's hard on you. So I think that, yeah, like, it's definitely good. And yeah, it was a good year, and it still can be a good year. And I'm like, not, I'm not going to like mail it in for whatever events that come up still, but
Oh, that's too bad. I was kind of hoping to having a beer with you right now.
yeah.
I'm sure you still would. You still would.
Oh man, it's Friday. I haven't trained yet today though. It's too bad. I try to get my training done in the morning.
Hell yeah. You probably, I know you keep in touch with Matt and Brent and those guys, and probably have a pulse on some of the other athletes in the community. Like, do they have a similar mindset? You find, is it kind of rubbing off? Everyone's rubbing off on one another a little bit in that sense, or is everyone just sort of,
Still
going
grinding
to the beat of their own drum, and like some people are stressed out, others don't really care? Like, what's the sense?
I don't know. I think that it sort of depends on the athletes. Like, I think like the top tier guys like Brent or Matt, Brent's the same as me. He's like, well, it sucked for him because I did Wadapalooza and he took that time to regroup and reset for West Coast Classic, where he was like peaking for West Coast. And then it didn't happen. So he's like, I just scrapped a whole bunch of training. But that was time. He's like, well, I'm just going to go back to like foundational stuff, like do a lot of strength, do a lot of movement pattern work. He's got an awesome setup at his house. So his training is basically unaffected in terms of what he can do, but he's just like, he's going to go back to the base, right? And build a strong base. And then if we get a heads up, like a month up or a month and a half that the games are going to happen, then you have time to shape that training into something deadly. But yeah, and I think Matt's very much the same way. I haven't talked to him recently really, but he's got a great setup. He's training with Tia still. It seems like they're basically living together, like Sammy and Matt and Tia and Shane.
Yeah, I've seen a few social media posts about
which
that.
I would
That's
say
cool.
like you guys should not be being that close to each other, but if they've been that way since the start, like basically you just need to distance away from people that are not in your household. So if you're thinking of them as one household, then whatever.
Yeah, they're just in the same germ bubble, I guess.
Yeah. So they I think they're still training, but if anybody, I think I would guess that they're smart enough to be doing the same thing. That it's like, now is not, there's nothing on the horizon, right? Like if you've got 4 months to get ready for a competition, like you're not going to be peaking like now, like you're not hammering stuff out now. Like this is building phase and people are going to be doing that. It depends if Matt and Tia are going to be doing this Rogue competition, which is supposed to be running online. I'm not sure how they're going to run it, but we filled out like an online survey recently about it. So that is still June. So that's like, you get a little check-in kind of maybe a month and a half in advance. But
I haven't seen anything about that in terms of details. Like, are they just sending it to athletes that have home gyms or what?
So we got an email the other day with a survey on it, basically, that asked you kind of where you were, what time zones you were in, and it went through a whole bunch of equipment of like what you had, asked for like a photo of what your gym setup would be, like where you could go. And like, yeah, basically like, what weights of dumbbells you have access to, what weights of wall balls, how much
what did you send
weight in barbells. Well,
like,
if that was going to happen and I was going to do it, I would try to just get access to my gym for that. So
yeah. I've got one red band, a couch, one fat grip.
See, but their initial email they sent was like, we're going to run this whole thing. It's like an online event with, it sounded basically like they were going to run it through almost like a Zoom conference where they said, everybody's going to have their own screen for them. People can tune in and watch. We're going to have everybody start at the same time. So you can if you're in Europe or in Australia or in North America, like that, starting at the same time has a whole different meaning.
Yeah.
And they're basically said, you should be able to, the workouts should be in a way that, you can do them in like your home gym, like in a normal CrossFit gym, outside. It's just like, okay, so if I'm gonna be doing my workout out on the lawn and I gotta like be measured against Brent and his like space age home gym. It's just it seems like there's some logistical hurdles, but they're trying to. It looks like they're trying to just get information right now, and then they're going to try to figure out how to do it from there. But it obviously, what's a shame is it affects the way that an event like that can be programmed, which was sort of part of the fun of it last year. Was, you know, you go to the Rogue headquarters and you get to play with some of the equipment, and they did a really cool job last year, making it like interesting and fun. But now I'm worried with limitations in terms of equipment. You're just going to have like these really shitty couplets and things like that are just going to crush people. And it's going to be more of a just like grind yourself to dust instead of like having a cool, like kind of fun competition with interesting nuance in it. But we'll see. So, and I think that, you know, if that goes well and that format goes well, like, and the games can't run live, then that might be something that they try to adopt as well. Right. So I think that that's going to be an interesting event. Just in terms of that. But yeah, I think that, you know, most top end guys, I think are trying to be more foundational now. And I think that there's like the tier below that who are, you know, maybe qualified for their first game, like Pete, like you, or like Adam Davidson, or guys like that who have just made their first games this year, who now are like their games is in jeopardy. Right. And I think that there's a lot of stress that comes along with that. So people in that scenario, or, you know, who won their national championship this year, but, you know, there's no guarantee they will next year, or there's probably a lot of people that are in a different sort of world where it's a lot more stressful. Like I'm very confident that if everything gets canceled from now on and there's no 2020 anything for the rest of the year, like I'll be okay next year. And I'm pretty confident in that. But I think that it's harder for a lot of athletes to have that confidence just based on whatever their circumstances. You know, like someone like you, Pete, for example, you just qualified for your games and then you had a kid right away.
Yeah.
Too. So it's like that presents a huge hurdle for like moving forward in the next year and things like that. Right. So it's just like there's a whole lot. Everybody's got a different, you know, social circumstance around them that kind of changes the way that they would think or feel the stress of the situation. So it's definitely not a fun setup, and hopefully things pan out as well as they can. It'd be cool if we got to do it at Aromas. I will admit, at the moment, I'm still a skeptic. Just because like I said, there's no way to pressure the government into opening this stuff up, right? So as much as like anybody can say like, yeah, it's cool, we're gonna do it at Aromas, like it's private property, it's like, okay, cool. But like if the government of California says, no, this is a sporting event, you're still not allowed sporting events, or no, this is a gathering of more than 50 people, that's still not allowed. And like our government says like, sorry, you're not traveling to the US.
Yeah, exactly.
Like we're just like, you're stuck. Like you're totally stuck.
There's so many variables. So
there's a lot of stuff still.
It'll be interesting. It'll be very interesting to see how it all pans out.
Yeah, and it is still a long way away.
Yeah.
But that statement they made was pretty like, you know, it's like, hey, we're either doing this or we're having an online competition. So it seemed like they're still like determined on hosting something, you know?
Yeah. I think that here's one of the things that I will say though, is I think being hell bent on no matter what, making sure that you can host something is not necessarily the way forward. Saying like quality be damned, like we're gonna do something, like that's not necessarily the answer, in my opinion. And again, I don't want to be like a skeptic, whatever, but like whenever I see this stuff, because it is like this is a global problem.
Yeah.
And so it's bigger than the CrossFit Games. It's like I just like it's my livelihood too, but like this isn't about the CrossFit Games.
Well, of course. I mean, they're canceling every major sports league has been canceled across the world, right?
Yeah.
So
the Olympics got canceled.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
and then you get a guy like Dana White who's like, all right, cool, I can't have a gathering, I'm gonna buy an island and then we'll just go there, and then that doesn't even happen, right? Like it's just it's pretty tough to to think that you can surpass what we're basically told not to do, right?
So I think that the biggest thing is it's time. Like we just need to see what happens in the next while, and there's no way to know. So it's cool to have like, okay, we've got this idea or this idea and this, but I think that like hosting in Aromas depends a lot on how things develop and if the government says it's okay.
Yeah.
Like many governments. especially for an international event where there's people who are going to be coming from all over. I think that's a huge logistical thing.
Yeah.
For the online thing, I think it depends a lot on how Rogues runs. And if Rogue runs a really good online event and it like goes pretty smoothly, even if there's some hiccups, but now there's another month and a half to iron that stuff out, that could bode super well. And it could mean that as much as I would not love to run an online event, even though I guess I won the Open, but I think you lose a lot, right? Not having live competition, but it is better than nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It could the live event. The live event could also depend on what kind of measures are put in place to slowly let that people trickle back out of their homes into businesses in some way, shape, or form. It could be that we're allowed to go have 10 people in a gym. And maybe we can hit a couple workouts or and whatnot instead of your front lawn, like you were saying before, which would make it a little bit easier in that sense. But
anyway, so it's depends on a lot of stuff. So it's exciting to see.
Yeah, the game's announcing that stuff though. I think I haven't talked to anyone over there, so don't quote me on it, but I think there's a little bit of strategy of keeping hope alive and like having a message of like optimism towards the future.
I think you're right.
Yeah, because like it's we hear all this shit canceled. The Olympics are canceled. We don't have any sports for 2020 possibly. The NHL is gone. I mean, I don't know if the Americans really care about that, but the NBA is gone, and the NFL is in jeopardy. So it's just like there's almost like this little glimmer of hope. It's like CrossFit saying like, okay, you know what? We're gonna try till we die to have this event happen. And then if it doesn't, then it's just like it doesn't, right? Like
then it's the same as everything else. No, I think you're right, and I think that's why I don't want to be the like but I agree. Like when I see stuff like that, I'm like
puts a smile on your face a little bit.
I kind of just like I'm like okay, but I'm also listening to like the government press releases and stuff, and I'm like okay. And so we'll see, and it is fun. Like I saw that announcement and I trolled the comments a little bit for a bit. And like it's interesting to me how many people read it as like the games are happening now in Aromas. And I'm like, well, they basically said we're currently still trying to plan an event in Aromas. I was like, there's a lot of language in there that's like not.
Yeah.
It is. I agree. Like I think it's nice to have the hope and to keep people like. I think it's hard. It would be hard if they were announcing. Like if it was still a spectator event or like vendors and things like that, because then you're keeping vendors on the hook and you're keeping spectators on the hook for tickets and things like that, and that's not really fair. But right now the way they've announced it as like it'd be a closed event with no spectators or vendors, I mean really it would just be people might have to travel fairly last minute, but you don't have like companies being like strung along until last minute and then being like, just kidding, we're canceling. So we'll
it's gonna go right back to 2007.
Yeah, I'm interested to see if they run it there, how they'll do it, because I don't think there's much for accommodation out there. As soon as I heard that, I kind of pictured like, exactly, they're gonna build like some like pop-up army barracks, like like old longhouse, and all the athletes are gonna sleep in the longhouse.
He has a pretty cool tent on his property. He posts about it quite often. It's a sick tent.
Yeah.
And if you want to eat, you have to hunt. Like
hunt the pigs.
Very Hunger Games.
Oh my God.
It'll be like a total military camp.
Well, I'm excited to see.
Yeah, it'd be cool. It would be really cool. It was fun there in 2016. So I think it would be neat. You're definitely. It's a whole different feel than any competition you've been to in the last couple of years for sure. I
wonder if they'll need a demo team still. Maybe I should call Dave.
Call him and ask him.
Hey, speaking of Dave, how are you two doing, Vellner?
Oh, just a little lovers quarrel, We're doing fine. Dave's fine.
That stuff was pretty entertaining.
Yeah, it was pretty entertaining. I agree. I feel like every morning I would like get up and I'd be having breakfast and then someone would text me and be like, man, Dave's going at you again. And I'd be like, okay. fire up the old Instagram and go see what Dave has to say today. So
type of thing that you get a text before you actually read it yourself. That's always pleasant.
Yeah. So it was fun. I think he's bored in quarantine like the rest of us.
Are you a little bit pissed about how the movie turned out?
No, like not with how the movie turned out.
Because like you're saying you're getting texts, like you're probably getting texts from people like, you know, basically saying that you're being portrayed as like a huge dickhead when obviously you're not.
Yeah, I would say that you read either way. Like, so I watched it in Miami right before Wadapalooza, the night before the competition. We're at the premiere, and yeah, I would say that when I left, I was like, oof, I could have done myself more of a service there.
But was that you, or was it like cut and pasted a little bit?
I think I think there's a bit of an element of that, because, you know, I'm typically someone that when I say something, I'll explain why I think it. So most of those things, like any of the stuff that, you know, Dave was posting, like I have a perfectly rational way that, like, if I was explaining to somebody, they would see at least why I think the way that I think. And there's no reason. Like, I very rarely make a knee-jerk assessment of something that's like has no grounding in reality. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I for sure. There's obviously, when there's events like that and like the cuts and things like that, like obviously you get passionate over things and you maybe like trip over your tongue a little bit. And it's not that I would say it's not that I don't agree with the things that I said, but I could have said them much better. Mm-hmm. I think that I try to speak a little bit more eloquently than that most of the time. And I was like, yeah, I saw a couple and I was like, wow, oof, that one didn't look good.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's some frustration in your tone, right? Because you're at the games, it's not going like, you know, there's a lot of things that are different that aren't necessarily going your way. And it's just like, then you got Heber and Mars in your face asking you, what do you think of the workout, Mary? It's just like, it's tough, right? But when we were texting, you said one of the best thing. You're like, yeah, you know, I probably could have said it in a better way, but hey, that's show business, baby.
Yeah. Yeah, really, like that's like, how many times have you watched like any other sport and like a presser and like somebody says something that's like, oh, and then it like dies like the next day.
Yeah.
Like, people like, you know, everybody said like throws little chirps and pressers all the time. And like, it was just, I tried to look at it as like, hey, you know what? And I think that's why they put it in that way.
Yeah.
Is because they're like, this is what a lot of people thought and a lot of spectators thought and a lot of things like that was the biggest criticism coming out of the 2019 games was that, you know, how the changes were not super well received by a lot of the community and by a lot of the athletes. And it was just like, that was a major storyline. So I think that to put it in that way really like amplified that. And like, I was sort of like the vessel that communicated that, that storyline. Right. So it was just sort of, you're like, oh, fuck, like, you know, and I'm sure that there's a lot of
take one for the team, Pat.
That don't reflect that storyline, but they didn't use that stuff because I was like, every clip of me in that show was meant to show that angle.
Yeah. So
like, and like, I'm sure any of the good stuff that I said or positive things, or I did good in an event and like, it doesn't, like that stuff doesn't cut, right? So, and like you said, Pete, like it's exactly, I just sort of end up being the ambassador for that. And I actually had a lot of athletes from the games message me after it and say like, hey, like, thanks for doing that. Kind of. And they're like, we get it. And even like at Wadapalooza, like some of the athletes who were there who went to the premiere or things like that were like, hey, what did you think? How did you feel about the way you got, you know, portrayed? I was like, well, you know, I could have been better, but like, I don't know. I think that it's fine. And like, I don't disagree with myself and I think it's fine. I'm sure some people will take it a certain way and it's too bad, but it is what it is. And they're like, oh, I loved it. Like, I thought it was awesome. Like you said what we were all thinking. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like, that's good. It's at least like, you know, you have some backup, but I agree. I don't like to look like I'm a whiner. Like, it's not.
Yeah. I think,
in my mind, that's not what I was doing, but yeah, I don't know. It's hard to be critical in CrossFit these days.
Did you listen to Dave's podcast on Talking Elite Fitness? His interview?
No, I didn't.
He he essentially says what you're saying now, that he is just playing his role in the story of, you know, exactly who people portray Dave to be. And he is basically putting out these posts to create a storyline to pump it up and help push the movie and all these things.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I figured. When this stuff started coming up, Dave never messaged me at all about this beforehand. And that's a lot of people ask me, they're like, "Are you in on this?" And I was like, "No." Dave's just like pecking at me. And I was like, I get it. Like, and I think that he knows me well enough that he's like, oh, you know, like I'm thick-skinned. I'm not going to be like crying about this and worried about it. So if you're going to do that, he's like, I have an opportunity to, you know, especially in a time where there's no events that are going to help propel the CrossFit brand or things like that, or keep people interested. He's like, yeah, you know, he just found another way to do it. And like you said, like fully on brand for him. He just sort of played his role, and then was able to do that. And eventually at one point when I started like tagging, I started tagging him and posting like those, like, "You have been marked safe" from Dave Castro in my story.
Those are great.
And like, it has been 0 days since your last attack from Dave Castro. Those things, he messaged me back on one of those, like saying something kind of condescending. And I was like, whatever. And I got talking to him there, and that's kind of what I said. I was like, no, the way I see it, you're using your platform in like the way that you can to try to generate views and push the movie. And he's like, yeah, basically that's exactly it. So I get it. Like, I understand Dave. And I know that like either way, like I think a lot of the criticisms that the Games has received, he doesn't, like, he's listening, like he's not trying to make a bad product, right? So whether or not he ever is going to sit there and say, oh yeah, no, this person was totally right when they said this, like he's never the guy that's going to do that. But he'll listen to them, and then he'll say, that guy's an idiot, he doesn't know what the hell he's talking about, all this information is like brutal, bogus. But then he'll go back to the workshop and he'll think about that, and he'll fix things that can be fixed. Mm-hmm. He's certainly not an idiot, and he's trying to make a good test, right? So I think that, you know, all those things he's noticed and he's paid attention to. But it's funny, you know, like, and I spoke to Dave right after the Games last year, like at the after party. I like had a drink with him and chatted with him talked about the whole Games, everything. And, you know, like agreed on most things. He kind of explained some of the pressures that they were under from the changes, and that they were the things that they were being asked to do. And I understand it. Like, I get it. Like, we had a totally nice conversation about it. So then it was funny when, you know, 8 months later, he's like slamming me on Instagram. I was like, dude, what the hell? We talked about this.
I thought we were cool.
But yeah, I get it. Like, I totally get what he was doing, and it's fine. Like I said, I'll be that guy if that's what it takes, you know?
That's awesome. I'm glad we got to talk about that. Thanks for bringing that up, Russ.
Yeah.
Pat, are you doing any, I know a bunch of Games athletes are doing like online workouts and stuff, like live workouts so people can tune in and work out with you. Are you doing any of that? Can people work out with you?
I haven't yet. I probably should. My workouts will be extremely boring.
You busted out that band.
Yeah. I did some stuff for like home strength things. I don't know. I might do some for actual, as far as actual like Instagram live or something like that. Maybe I'll do some soon. I'm supposed to do one for Food Spring on the weekend at some point, I think. I got to get more information about it, because they're running in Europe like a little charity 3 workout kind of thing. So I'm supposed to do one of the workouts for them.
What do you got? Oh yeah, there's Pat Vellner. His balls are getting licked by his dog.
Yeah. What a dude.
Man looks tough.
We're going to send you a Zoom link for a CrossFit NCR virtual class, 9 a.m. on Monday morning.
See, is that 9 a.m. Eastern time?
Oh, wait. Okay, we'll send you the noon.
I keep having this problem from people. They're like, yeah, it'd be sweet. You can jump in. Like, normally we get started like 8 o'clock. And I'm like, yeah, that's not going to happen.
No chance.
Like, I'm not getting up at 5 o'clock on a Saturday to just like hang out. I love everybody in your gym, but
yeah, maybe not. Yeah, you're right. Man, have you seen the virtual classes or something like that yet, or?
I've done a couple with some people, and like you know, like Pete, we did that one with Carolyn and Jeff.
God awful workout.
Yeah, man, you guys went so hard.
I went so hard.
It's funny because you couldn't see, like, you can't see the screen from where you're doing the workout in order to like be in frame.
Yeah.
You did it with dumbbell, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I could just hear everybody else's barbells like going after they do the snatch. So it was whatever it was, 5 pull-ups, 10 push-ups, 15 squats, 1 snatch.
Yeah.
So, and when they were like, what did Carolyn say at the start? Like you should be able to get all the reps done in like 35 seconds or something.
Yeah, like 35, 40 seconds.
And I was like, what the hell are you talking about?
I was like, okay. So
I was like, no, it took me like 40, just over 40 probably every time. Or like 40-ish.
I didn't lock out a single air squat.
I was like, it's an EMOM. Like, relax. We're just gonna finish it in the minute and do 30 minutes.
Oh, I was still dying though.
Oh yeah, it was like hard enough. God. I got kind of like bored partway through, and I was also like, I was
boring workout in the world.
I was breaking my push-ups. It was great. Like, do 5 push-ups, take a rest, do 5 push-ups.
We're at the beginning. We're talking about like people don't have heavy weights and stuff at home, but do you think and like, you know, for athletes like yourself, and games athletes, some of you guys are taking like off seasons now, but we were on a podcast with James, and we think that a lot of people are going to get fitter from this quarantine, just crushing themselves with these body weight benchmark workouts and ab finishers day after day.
So it depends on your definition of fitness.
Yeah.
Well, it's work capacity across broad time.
Because they'll improve they'll improve at those things, right? You're gonna get better at the stuff you do.
Yeah.
So like aerobically and like, you know, muscular endurancely, like for sure will be. Power is gonna go down, strength is gonna go down. So like certain things will suffer and certain things will flourish, and that's just gonna be a product of what you have to work with. But it's very hard to work on high power output. If you have ergs, you can do some of it. But you know, like
the only other way is going outside and sprinting potentially. If you have zero weight,
like jump training, like you could do jump training with like bands and dumbbells and stuff. Like you could do stuff, but most people are probably not doing as much of that. If like you're saying, most people are doing like their 20-minute whatever.
Versions. Yeah.
And the other thing to think about is what a lot of people are doing. I've noticed is they're doing really long workouts. So a lot of people have a tendency to then like, oh, I'm just going to like program this, like, because they have the time and they want to just like flow and move. Like, I just want to move. So they'll do like an hour long, like workout at, you know, almost a conversational pace.
Mm-hmm.
So like, that's also something that, you know, it's good. Like it's still aerobic base, right? Like you're still like, if you're in zone 1 for like however long, you're still going to get some aerobic training, but how do those things translate on the outset? Like those are all areas of fitness, but it's just, like it's like your breadth of fitness may not be as good on the way out because you haven't had the ability to train certain things as often. Or you know, like for me, like I can't go swim anymore because the pools are all closed. So like when I go to the pool again for the first time, like I'm just going to feel kind of awkward for like a session. And then like certain things will suffer, of course. But yeah, you're right though. Like if people want to like bury themselves in lightweight stuff like that, like you can definitely crush yourself with like nothing but a dumbbell or a kettlebell.
Or you think about the average person who shows up like 5 days a week to just one class, who's not, you know, honing a lot of the high skill stuff, and you know, maybe they get the one heavy day per week and it's their mainly like conditioning that's suffering. Like this is going to be, this could get interesting for them coming out on the other side.
So if those are your
weapons,
gaps, that's great. But the problem is that there's a lot of people that those aren't the gaps. There's a lot of people who probably like just got their first muscle up right before quarantine.
Never do a muscle up again.
You know what I mean? Like there's things like that like those skills are also important, right? Like the balance, coordination, that's stuff that you don't get to practice anymore. So trying to find ways to like even practice certain movement patterns or find like small drills you can do at home can be helpful. And it may not feel like training because you're just working movement patterns.
So you know what, that's actually something you should release something like that. You're a gymnast. You should release the Pat Vellner's muscle up program without ever actually doing a muscle up at home quarantine package.
Yeah, maybe. But
I did an hour long workout last weekend, and I wasn't in zone 1. I was not in zone 1. There was running in it, so I was in the red basically the whole time.
The second you hit the runner.
Yeah. It's funny because I got a message on Instagram today actually about exactly that. Someone who's like, hey, I just got my muscle up right before the gym closed. Like I just bought a set of rings. Like, what can I do at home to make sure that when I go back to the gym, I can still hit my muscle up? So that's exactly what's happening for some people.
For sure. And that's just the thing to remember. But like at a certain point, if you can't do certain things, like you can also try not to focus on the things you can't do and focus on the things you can do. Right. So I think that that's super important. And like Pete's saying, like, yeah, there's a lot of work that can be done with a minimal amount of equipment and space. And if you're willing to do it, it's great. And that's what I think those, like all the little mini competitions, like free competitions that are popping up are great. Like people should just sign up for all of them because it gives you a reason to like do a workout. Most of them are none or minimal equipment. And it gives you a reason to do something with like maybe more intent than you would if you were just by yourself. And like push yourself a little bit harder. And then, it gives you kind of like, you can measure yourself between people. And I think that those are just fun ways to do it because it can get boring when you have a very minimal setup. And I think that, I don't mind it, but that's sort of what makes me a really good games athlete is I think that to be really good at that stuff, you have to just be okay doing boring work for a long time. And that's sort of like part of one of those like, skills that people don't talk about that makes an athlete really good is just willingness to do the really stupid menial shit like all over and over and over every day forever and like be willing to come back and keep doing it. But most people don't feel that way. Like they want a reason we do CrossFit is for the variety, right? And I think that it's easy to get bored, but that's why those things will just like they'll give you fresh ideas and keep you feeling like a little more motivated. But
Pat, thanks, man.
my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's like we didn't really talk about your history or the games or anything because I think everyone basically knows
people
you.
Know that.
Yeah, people know you now, right? So I think it's cool to just get your point of view on certain things. That I think people will really appreciate that. You should, but speaking of your past, just as a closing thing, you should really go and listen to the podcast we did with J-Mac.
Yes.
Wow.
Oh, he's just got some. You'd like it. You might know a bunch of the stories, anyways. But we just decided to go down the rabbit hole of UFC stories.
Oh, I love it. And I still like whenever I see him, I want to just like sneak up behind him and try to throw a choke in or something. see how long it would take him to like absolutely ragdoll me across the room.
Yeah,
just like it's awesome. I always just look at his huge hands and I'm like, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Go listen to it. It's great.
Oh, definitely.
Thanks a lot, Patty.
Oh, it's my pleasure, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Nice seeing you.
Yeah, you guys too. I'm glad to see that you're all in separate locations and staying safe and staying quarantined, but staying fit.
They just released that the province of Ontario is allowing, I don't know, maybe it's a Canada-wide thing. You can have beers in your driveway with your neighbors at a safe distance now.
That's right. They called them the driveway beers. Now
they call them driveway beers.
They call them driveway beers. Now deemed acceptable at a reasonable distance or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. So
what about driveway beers by yourself?
Yeah.
Because I've been doing that.
Just putting the vibe out, waiting for other people to take the bait.
Maybe when the weather gets better, we'll do a podcast with some driveway beers.
Oh, that'd be huge.
Love it.
I mean, the weather's great here.
Yeah,
but
good.
It's been like almost 20 degrees for the last like 10 days.
Oh, that's amazing. Cool.
I know. All right, guys, take care of yourselves. Take care of your kids.
Bye. See you, man.
See you, dude.
See you, boys.